I just wanted to come at. I wanted to come at Limitless Lives with like my face in the screen because it's like boom, boom, boom. Ah! So that was the ha. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Awesome. Excited today because Dr. Julia West is going to come on here in just a second. And Julia and I, first of all, we haven't done a live in just about a minute because she was traveling, I was traveling, and so we were all over the place. And we're going to talk about, I talked with Krista on Wednesday about thriving, right? And we just kind of really laid it out what it is. But today, Julia and I are going to go deep. We're going to go talk about the habits that you can have to help you thrive. What are those habits to help you thrive? I have no clue why I'm yelling, by the way. No clue why I'm yelling.
You really don't? You yell all the time.
I got some, again, when I was in Italy, I got ruined. Like coffee in Italy is like this next level thing.
Did you try to say that like a New Yorker? Coffee?
No. Well, that's just, I'm from New York. So yes, it comes out.
That's why I was making that joke.
But so I ordered some coffee today that I thought might up level the coffee experience. Illy coffee.
Yeah.
So I got a bunch of pods in the mail today, and I had way too many of them because they taste good.
I can tell. I think Josh's natural baseline state is that of like about 4 cups of coffee deep.
Yeah,
that's about right.
That's about right.
This is great. I love being here. Hi, everybody. It has been a minute. It's already August, which is kind of nuts because the summer feels like it went by in a flash.
My kids go back to school next week. It's crazy.
Is that right? So it's different in the South because I live in Pennsylvania, and I'm realizing this because I have so many coworkers that live in the South, and your kids go back way earlier. In PA, it's really not uncommon for people to go back to school after Labor Day.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in New York, and I was always watching the U.S. Open. I would get all sad because that means like Labor Day is around the corner.
Yeah.
I go back to school.
When I was a kid, the Discovery Channel used to play Shark Week at the end of August. And it was definitely like my last hurrah for summer. We always did get a little sad when Shark Week came around, as much as we enjoyed it, because it meant the summer was over and we had to go back to school. But I see Travis is in the house today. Hello. And he's right. Josh, you don't need any caffeine.
You know what is kind of cool though, you talk about Shark Week, is I've actually witnessed sharks in the wild. So it's just a different experience when you're out there in the water and you see a shark. You go, okay, let me get out of here. That thing.
I have not, and I am very happy to leave that in your camp. I have no desire.
Yeah.
I don't know for any of our listeners, viewers, if you know that Josh is a surfer. He's like a surfer dude. I'm sure you got that from the aesthetic. But do you have any like hemp?
A very bad surfer dude. A very bad surfer.
Do you have any like hemp necklaces? I haven't seen any.
So fun fact. Now we're not even talking about anything but just stupid stuff.
Oh, no. I have a method for madness.
But fun fact.
Oh, you have little faith. There's a method here. Come on.
When I was in my 20s, you're going to like this. First of all, you're going to tell me I'm lying, but I did some modeling in New York City, and one of the periodicals that
I am going to make fun of
you. Get photographed for was a periodical called Hemp Times. So I was in that magazine.
I feel like it fits. I'm definitely going to drag you for being a model. But hi, Sophie Warda's in the house, and she's noticing my pink claws. This is something here's my segue. Ready?
Ooh, I'm excited about it. Thankfully, we have a segue. Otherwise, people are like, I don't give a fuck.
I was happy when you asked me to come on today. I've been watching the lives this week on thriving, and I love that. And we're going to continue that today. And one of the things that I was telling Josh that I wanted to cover, because it felt like a great way to cap off the week, were some habits to help you thrive.
Yeah.
Right?
It's one thing to kind of understand what thriving maybe looks like, but then what are things I can do on a daily basis in order to help myself have that experience?
Yes. Okay. So when I think of thriving, I think of joyful living.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like just something. And so, Sophie mentions my nails. It's definitely, I know it's not what most people would think of as thriving, but for me, like just something small, thriving And joy can be found in even the smallest things, right? And that's going to be a theme of what we talk about today. And for me, if you've seen me on lives, if you see me other places, maybe even in person, you notice I wear a lot of jewelry and I have my nails done. And there's a reason for this. I derive a lot of joy out of seeing beautiful adornments on my hands. I really like that. I like color. I like the idea of not saving your best jewelry for a special day because every day is special, right? So it's something really small, but in the morning when I get dressed and I put on my, my bangles that you love to joke about with me, or I put on my rings, or I go and get my nails done, I get a little bit of joy and a lot of appreciation. And we're going to talk about how those two things and actually channeling those into a real deal habit that there is a name for is a habit for thriving.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that thought process of like doing this stuff, like getting a little dressier, wearing some nice jewelry, doing your nails, whatever, for yourself, right? Yeah. I love that. Like there was a MMA fighter. His name is George St. Pierre. I don't know if you ever heard GSP. He's one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. And he used to always wear a suit to press conferences. And it was all about, for him, a recognition that in the ring, hey, I'm in the ring, I'm a fighter. When I'm out here, this is about business. And so it was a nice way for him to kind of make that transition for himself, kind of like shift his mindset to, okay, now I'm in a suit and tie. He's from Montreal, so there's a French aesthetic there. Right. And so, by the way, one of my favorite things to do when I was in the restaurant business, if somebody was French, I would ask them what part of Canada they were from. They loved that. It was great.
8 minutes, by the way, for anybody keeping track. That's how long it took into this live for Josh to mention that he was once in the restaurant business. So congratulations. That's a new record.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I also worked in baseball. Hey, so there you go. Okay. So, but I like that aesthetic of changing, like, okay, here I am in one facet. And here I am in another facet. But I love what you're talking about in terms of, hey, I'm dressing up for me. If you've seen the show The Bear, has anybody seen the show The Bear yet? Have you seen that show yet on Hulu?
No, but it's in my queue because you've recommended it.
It's amazing. But in there, one of the characters wants to wear a suit. And he wears a suit because it makes him feel really good and it makes him feel powerful and it makes him feel like next level. So I love that. I think that's yes. Yeah.
That's something that I love about this habit that we're going to introduce without further delay, folks, is that it's a habit that has science behind it, but it's infinitely customizable because when it comes to thriving, what that feels like or looks like for one person is different than what it could feel like or look like for another person, right? Yeah. And so that's what I love about this habit for thriving or for joyful living is that you can do it in infinitely different ways to fit your lifestyle and your definition of what it means to be joyfully alive. Awesome. So wait, this habit for anybody with us today that's ever heard of this, it is called savoring. Pop in the chat really quick if you've ever heard of savoring applied to like habits. Or if you haven't, tell me what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word savor or savoring. See if we get responses here. And I know that you have a story.
Yeah. So
Josh, while we're waiting, you tell us your savoring story. Oh, Mark says French.
There you go.
Okay. All right. French fries.
There you go.
Delish.
Yeah. Oftentimes when you think of savor, you immediately go to food, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mark,
when you hear the phrase savor, you know, the trite phrase is, you know, savor the moment, whatever. Savory crepe for Sophie Ward.
Oh, Sophie, that's very fancy. I love it. I love it. Yes. Like you have the sweet flavor, you have savory. Right.
Absolutely. Hold on to it so you can process it.
Ooh.
Let's put in hold on to it so you can process it. And I think
love that.
About savor, right? That yes, food is very clear. And what it does is and you're going to kind of talk about this in a second, but what I found it does is that when you savor something, when you're like really intentional about checking in to that moment. And for me, savoring is really about being present moment awareness intentionally.
Yes.
And what it does is, what I found it does is it creates long-lasting memories. And so I was telling you prior to jumping on the live that when I was in Spain recently, we were in Madrid. Madrid's an awesome city. And we were staying in this area which it felt more, it felt smaller than a big city. It was still part of the very big city, but it was like kind of villagey. It felt like there was lots of neighbors. It felt like there was like a community there. And in basically every town in Spain, you have your small streets, your houses, and then always there's like they call it the Plaza Mayor, the major plaza. And this little area was no exception. There was this little plaza. There was a church with a bell that rang every hour. And there was all these cafes, and there was one specific cafe that 10 o'clock at night was always full, always full. And so Karen and I were like, hey, we're going to go eat there tonight. Everybody else there, they're all speaking Spanish. There's no Americans there. So we're going to go there because it looks good. So we go, we sit down. Not that Americans kind of take bad food, but it's just like it was only people who lived in this area were there, right? It wasn't tourists.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, there you go. But hey, best restaurants in the world are in New York.
Right.
Anyway, so we go up, and I literally had the best tomato I've ever had in my life at this restaurant. And it was like fresh, you bit into it, it had a crisp to it, but it was juicy and it was flavorful, but it was sweet, not tart. And they served it with like a burrata. That's a little trite, like the burrata tomato salad, but this had like just a little bit more to it than. And again, the tomato was the star of the show. The burrata was not. And it was like, and I
had to have been a really good tomato.
It was an amazing tomato.
When burrata is on my plate, I have eyes for nothing else.
Yes, but the burrata, just diving in.
Burrata,
I agree. But as I'm eating this tomato, I'm recognizing right off the bat, like, oh my Lord, this tomato is like punching me in the face. It's so good. And so instead of hustling, it was like one bite, chew, just let it sit in your mouth, like really appreciate it. And as I appreciated, that was the act of savoring for me.
So I just want to I want to zoom out for a second and ask you were doing this real time, correct? Like you were in the moment that you were eating the tomato, you were like, oh, this tomato, like, this is amazing. Like okay, that's key, right? Like, so exactly right. That what you were doing was savoring. Now, what I want to talk about today is, and I don't think it's a coincidence that, truth be told, when I brought this topic up to Josh, he was like, oh my God, Julie, I have to tell you about this tomato. Right. And folks in the chat are like, oh, French fries, a savory crepe, right? There's a reason why we think about food, but here's the thing. What that tells me is that the experience of savoring is universal because we all eat, right? Yep. And we all know how to do it because we've probably done it with food at one point or another. So you have all of the building blocks for this habit already in you. Just what we need to do now is think about applying it to experiences.
Yeah.
And that is what, our dear friend, LinkedIn user, I don't have your name, you put in the chat, hold on to it so you can process it. And that is much closer to the definition of savor that I want to talk about with y'all today, which really is doing, just got word, Meredith. Thank you, Meredith, for your accurate description of savoring. Savoring is taking a step back from your thoughts within an actual experience to intentionally appreciate it.
Yeah.
That is really what it is. And there's an entire science behind it. It is a very commonly studied phenomenon in positive psychology because, Josh, you're right. Savoring has been shown to increase the amount of time that positive emotions can last for you. Right? So there's this fancy term that I taught Josh right before today's live.
And Mari learned it too.
And Mari, I taught her as well. What is do you remember what the term was, Josh? Or should I unveil it?
And I know it was, no, I don't
know. Okay, so I didn't do a very good job, folks. So I'm going to teach you all, and I'm going to try to do better. The term is called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation. And this is what it means. it's like an emotional regression to the mean, right? So like, Josh talks about homeostasis a lot. Our bodies, our brains are driven by an urge to get back to baseline. And that applies to emotions too. So a hedonic adaptation is the tendency in humans to be experiencing like a positive emotion and then very quickly returning to emotional baseline, right? And I was telling Josh, as somebody that has dealt with and deals with a lot of anxiety in my life, like me, I really like this concept from the other end, right? Like something that's very comforting to me, to my clients, to my patients that have anxiety is when I remind them, when I remind myself, hey, you're not going to feel like this forever. This is going to pass. Your body wants to get back to baseline. On the other end, that sometimes means that your positive emotions and experiences don't last as long as we'd like. They kind of slip through our fingers. So something that you can do to actually prevent hedonic adaptation is savoring.
Yeah.
Right? Intentionally taking time out while you're doing the thing to really recognize, oh, I really appreciate this thing. Right? And there are some specific ways to do it. Do you want to hear?
Can I ask you a quick question?
Oh, of course you can.
So I'm thinking back to moments that have been just really fun and amazing and wonderful, whether they were in my life or in my life. And I'm wondering if the hedonic adaptation is kind of like this thing that props up that like this is too good to last, or you better protect yourself because when really good stuff happens, something bad always happens afterwards, right? Because these are like the thoughts that kind of creep up in the back of my mind. So I'm wondering, is that kind of an example of that?
Is that an example of hedonic adaptation?
Yeah.
I'd say that's more of an example of emotional avoidance.
Okay.
Because when people say that to me, and it's common, actually, I think this way too. Like I've worked very hard and still work regularly to not default to when's the other shoe going to drop.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not just me. That's a lot of people, right? What I've learned living and then also being a psychologist and studying these things is that is rooted in a fear of being disappointed. We don't like to experience certain emotions, so we try to avoid them. Okay. And what that does sometimes is it prevents us from experiencing good emotions that we would miss in the present.
Got it.
Yeah. So like that's
because you're over here, you're already in the future.
Exactly.
Just staying present, intentionally staying present, savoring. And so it kind of will pull you out of savoring. Okay.
Exactly. Although I do want to say, this is pretty granular, but I do want to say savoring is not just a present moment activity. It very often is. But you can actually savor a memory.
Yeah.
Or you can savor a future that you're visualizing. Right? So savoring doesn't have a timestamp to it, which is really neat because, it is the opposite of ruminating. If you've ever kind of like chewed on something and you can't stop chewing on it, right? Like you've ruminated, right? I see a comment here that I definitely want to address from David Zay about this quote from The Office. And am I ashamed or proud that I know exactly the episode and this quote was said by Andy?
Totally proud. Totally proud. I'm very proud of you.
I'm going to go with proud. Andy Bernard said, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And Zay, you totally nailed it. This savoring would be that act that would give you the ability to really be more fully in that moment. Any parents, or in Zay's case, future parents, right? Like on the call, probably do this. There's probably moments where you're watching your kids. Maybe you have more than one kid and you see them together and they're getting along maybe for once, right? And you get this moment and your heart kind of feels like it's going to overflow. And you're like, oh my God, I made those kids. Like, and look at them. They're loving each other and they have this beautiful friend, you know, and it wasn't there before. And all of that, that's an example of savoring an experience, savoring a moment. Okay. I got to address some of these. We're getting gold in the chat. Sophie Ward is crying. I would be. I think I've somehow kept it together today, which is unusual for me. But Travis is saying, as an Enneagram 7, okay, I struggle with staying in the present moment. So being able to be in the moment without it needing to be different is really hard and powerful.
Yeah.
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 I think this is like,
that's acceptance, right? It's just like
it is acceptance.
The power of acceptance, and just,
yeah,
you know, something might not be comfortable, something might be not ideal, but that moment of just, this is where I am, I'm accepting it, can be really, 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 truly powerful. I think about, so there's I remember listening to meditations years ago, and there's a meditation teacher, and he was talking about how he had to ride on a bus. He was in India, he was studying in India.
Okay.
He had to take this bus. It was super hot in the city he was in. He was going up to the mountains to get away from the heat. And he had to take this bus in India, and he happened to be the only seat that was available was next to several people, and kind of smushed in, and it was right on top of like this like really hot, like loud box thing that's part of the engine or whatever.
Sure.
And he was like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm gonna ignore it, and I'm just gonna breathe through it. I'm just gonna focus, and you know, that's not gonna work in that situation.
Right.
And so he just, as soon as once he accepted that this was going to be his reality for 7 hours, without judgment, this was the right, without judgment, neutral, then he was able to deal with it in a much better way, where he got curious about the experience versus judging it.
And he wasn't fighting it, right?
He wasn't fighting
you know what? I wanna weave what you just said with Travis's comment about how it's really hard to be in the moment without it needing to be different. When we train present moment awareness, when we train being in the present moment, a lot of the way we train it, or a lot of the way it's trained in general, is how to live through difficult moments. What I love about savoring is that it approaches being in the moment from a totally different angle.
Yeah,
I think
right?
It feels like it's something that has that reinforcement, that like helping yourself accept a difficult moment and be present to it is crucial to well-being and to performance. It doesn't mean it's fun, right? Savoring is fun. And so it's just another way of practicing being in the present moment while also feeling good. And who among us doesn't want to feel good, right? And so that's what I really love the angle on it, because when I think about practicing being in the moment or leaning into the moment, I'm frequently doing that when I know that I'm up against something hard, right? And I don't want to run away and I want to kind of lean in. Very, very important. But you can get those present moment reps.
Yeah.
Also with a little bit of fun if you do savoring, which is great. Yeah. I want to give some examples of like how to savor.
Yes, please do.
You described one with the tomato. So one of the things that you can do to actively savor, because a lot of times when I talk to clients about this, they're like, I love this, Julia, like you totally sold me. How the heck do I do it? Right? Like, how do I do it? One is leaning into your senses. And so it's kind of no secret that like savoring would involve senses, whether you're talking about food or whether you're just talking about being in the present. Your senses live in the present, right? You're not smelling something from the future, right? Right. You're not touching something that happened last week, right? So leaning into your senses is a way to really lean into that present moment. And especially if what it is that you're trying to savor is very joyful, it will be something that will really deepen that, form that memory, and extend those positive emotions. So leaning into your senses. And you can do that really simply by asking yourself, like, what can I see and what do I appreciate about what I can see? What can I feel and what do I appreciate about what I can feel? Right?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
In here? So I was thinking about this in terms of, I just remembered, like, when people get divorced, like they say you lose half your memories, right?
Gosh.
Have you heard this?
This conversation down. Yikes.
No. But like, so I'm flipping it around. Like,
I haven't heard that. That feels sad.
Think about it, right? Because a lot of the memories that you have, you're bouncing off of each other and you're kind of having them together. And so I was thinking about, like, and you're going to remember things differently than I'm going to remember things, and we complete the story together, right? So as like with Karen,
that's gonna make me cry.
With Karen, so
I never thought of it like that.
Forget to, but like with Karen, right? So I'm having this tomato, and I shared it with her, and so I was thinking about, like, me sharing that with her is allowing her to have that savoring experience as well. And so now we're creating this shared memory, which can last even longer.
So
because her memory of it and my memory of it, it's like, and then reaching across. So that's what I was wondering, like, does it make it longer? Does it strengthen it?
Josh, are you like doing that thing where you already know the answer and you're just
I'm assuming the answer, but I don't know it.
I swear to God, my second piece of advice is share the experience with others. It is science. Unbelievable. Look, your default led you to the right answer.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. So wait, I need to read this because I don't want to mess it up. Actively seeking and including other people in that personal positive experience and listening to shared stories about past events or future plans can amplify your positive emotion, because the other person, the other people, they might point out relevant positive details that we might have missed.
Yeah.
And so thereby, enriching your experience, and also watching that other person's emotional response can increase how good you feel about it. Like, how good does it feel to watch somebody that you love laugh?
Yeah.
It feels amazing. I can't not smile.
My favorite sound in the world is my wife laughing. It's literally my favorite sound in the world.
I hope she's listening to this. Karen, we're going to get this for you.
She's not. She's out there closing deals. She's paying for our education.
I love it. But yeah, like, you're exactly right. So if you have to start anywhere, right, start with those two things. Internally, right, when you're in that experience, lean into your senses and ask yourself specifically, can I describe for myself what I love so much about this experience, right? Yeah. And then to involve other people, share it.
Yes.
Share it. Oh my, how often do we go up to people that we love, that we interact with? Oh my God, I have to tell you about this thing that happened to me. But it's usually a bad thing.
Negative. Right. Yeah.
Which is also fine. We don't want to promote not getting the support. But here's the thing. How different does a moment with somebody that you love feel if you were to be like, if I had gone to my husband and said, hey, Paul, I have to tell you about this adorable thing I saw the boys do. Actually, I do that frequently. And you relive it all over again. Julia, you're feeling that, you're sharing that.
Attitudes are contagious, right? We do this a lot of times in our keynote, where we have people share one great thing that happened to them in the last 24 hours. And if we're live in a room, it gets so loud. It explodes. The room explodes with smiles and joy. Energy is amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. So yes, and.
Yes, and we have the yes and man here himself.
Yes.
And the final thing that I'll say, okay, about a third way for you to be able to savor. In business, we often get so caught up with getting to the next thing and the next goal and the next, quarter, the next deal, etc. All of which is very important, that we forget to stop and savor where we are and how far we've come. And I think some folks, I talked to somebody recently who told me, like, Dr. West, I don't feel like I can do both. So I'm going to pick looking forward to that next thing. And I encourage this person to embrace the nuance, because you can do both.
Yeah, you can.
And in fact, savoring has been linked to more resilient performance, because as you might imagine, somebody that takes the time to stop and savor is restoring their energy continuously, right?
Yeah.
And so, not that I think we should all savor only because it will improve performance. We're allowed to be human beings, right, Josh? Not just human doings. So it's okay to savor just for the joy of it.
Yeah.
Just so that you're aware, it is a high performance strategy at the same time.
Love it.
So I hope you got, this was fun for me.
Yeah, we're unfortunately up against it on time, but let's just go really quickly. 1, 2, 3. What were the 3 things? And maybe Mari can listen.
Yes. Okay.
So,
the first is
have your senses be alive, right?
Your senses. Number 2, share it with someone else.
Yep.
It amplifies the joy.
And
Number 3, don't forget to congratulate yourself about how far you've come. Exactly. Yeah. And that'll be great. So if you care to, please comment even after you were done. What is something you are going to savor over the next day? We'd love to hear it. We'll go ahead and comment on it even after we're done here. Thank you so much, Josh, for asking me on today. I really appreciate it.
Dr. J, we matched today, which was awesome. It's a bright blue day. It's a bright blue day out there. And we're just favorite because this is it, right? We have one of these days. Today is it. Enjoy it, embrace it, love it, share it, and then congratulate yourself on doing it.
I love it.
We'll see you back on Monday. Mari, who do we got on Monday? You remind me who we got on Monday again, Mari? Here we go. Monday.
For Mind Gym Monday.
Mind Gym Monday, 12:30. It is. Who's it going to be?
Well, we have Andy Reese.
Andy and Mike.
And Mike Lewis. Absolutely. So join Andy and Mike on Monday for a little time in the Mind Gym. Get your mind ready for some reps, and we'll see you there.
Peace, love, and hair grease.
Happy weekend, everyone. Bye.